Alright, this video is just going to show you how to do homework 2 in Excel, show you a couple of things with Excel, and then how to bring a table and a picture into Microsoft Word from Excel. The first step you want to do is calculate annual usage. We can just assume this is the demand. Let's say it's demand in thousands of units and this is the unit value. Multiply demand times value to find out how much we sell of each item. So to do that, we just type equals and click in the cell B2 times C2. Now these are different numbers than on the homework, but it's the same steps you would go through. So we get that this one sells $2,430 per year. If these were in thousands, this would really be $2.4 million in sales for this one item. Once we have calculated the annual usage for this one item, if we go over to the corner of the cell and get this little black plus sign, you can either click with the left mouse button and drag this formula down to copy the formula down. First, so I have B2 times C2, B3 times C3, B4 times C4, etc. Or you can get this black plus sign, and because there's numbers over on the left side, we could just double click there with the left mouse button. Right? And then if we get this little double arrow and double click, that'll resize this field for us. So now we have the annual usage of each item. The next step would be to sort all these things. So if you'll just select all of these cells, go to the Data tab, click on Sort, sort by annual usage. Make sure this check box marked My Data Has Headers is selected. If you selected the names of the columns when you selected those numbers, say OK. And you can see inadvertently I sorted those from low to high. What we'd like them to be is sorted high to low, so click Sort again. Change the order here, largest to smallest, and click OK. So now we have the most important items to our business at the top, least important at the bottom. We want to also go ahead and we can put a line underneath that so it looks consistent. We go ahead and calculate a total. To do that, the easiest way is just click Auto Sum. It should select all the cells above it, hit Enter, and you can see total cells are 604,901. So the next step is to calculate the percent usage of each item. So for example, item 15 has the most usage. Click equals cell D2 divided by D31. Right? And that gives you percent usage. You can click the percent button. You can add a couple decimal points if you wanted to. Right, and see what the usage is on that one item. Let's do 1 decimal point. Okay. Now we'd like to copy this formula down rather than typing it 28 times. But if we just drag this formula down, it will be D2 divided by D31, and then we'll have D3 divided by D32, which is a blank cell. So that as we copy these formulas, they always refer to this specific cell. If we go up to the formula bar, click anywhere in here in the D31, and push the F4 button on the keyboard, you get a dollar symbol before the D and the 31. That means wherever we copy this formula, it will always refer to the cell to the left divided by D31, because you have the dollar sign before the D and the 31. If you put dollar sign before the number, only the number would stay fixed, the row would stay fixed, the column would change. If dollar sign was just before the column, the D, the column would stay fixed, the row would change as you copy this formula around. But we'll leave it like this for this situation. Right. Then we can go ahead and get this little black plus sign in the lower right corner of the cell and just drag that down. You could also go ahead and double click that, but it would calculate the total down here, which you don't need. That's why I drug that down instead. So now we have, I'm going to put that underline back there. And it copies the formatting as well as the formula. So then we want to figure out what is the cumulative usage. This is just a running total. So in F2 it'll just be 47%. In F3 it would be 47 plus 14.9%. Again, to avoid typing the same formula 30 times, the easiest thing to do is click on this cell, type equals sum, that's just going to add things up, parentheses, select cell E2. So the first one's going to be sum of just one cell. But if we want to be able to copy this formula easily and always refer to cell E2 through whichever cell we're putting the formula into, we can go ahead and put a colon there, click on E2 again. Right? So this is a sum of E2 through E2, so it's still just a sum of one number. We click here anywhere in the E2 and push the F4 on the keyboard, or manually type in these dollar symbols. And now as you drag this formula down, it will be E2 through, sum from E2 through whatever cells to the left of where you place the formula. So to show you how that works, can drag this down a couple spaces. You can see we have sum of E2 through E2, the sum of E2 through E3, the sum of E2 through E4. So this is constantly increasing. We can go ahead and drag that formula using the same techniques I showed you before, all the way down to the bottom. And this last one should be 100%. So this tells us one item accounts for 47% of our sales, 5 items account for 80% of our sales, all 29 items account for 100% of our sales. The next step is calculate cumulative percent of items. So if you were to count these, you'd see down here it says the count is 29. We have 29 different items we sell. So cumulative percent of items equals 1 divided by 29. Right? The first item is one item out of 29. It's 3.4% of our sales, of our items that we sell. Or 3.4% of our stock keeping units, or SKUs. So in the next cell, it would be equals 2 divided by 29. 3 divided by 29. And it doesn't really work to copy that down. But another thing you could do, change this to percentage view. Another thing you could do is copy this value right here. If you right click, you can hit these 1, 2, 3 to paste the value, does not paste the formula. Then you could type in equals previous cell plus 0.34%, because each item that we sell accounts for 3.4% of our total items that we sell. So in that case, if we typed a formula such as this, if you've done that earlier, you can just copy that down. It's going to be the previous total plus 3.4%. Drag that all the way down, and we get a total of 100%. And we can go ahead and underline those cells if we wanted to. So now, cumulative usage goes from 47 to 100%. Percent of items goes from 3.4 to 100%. So we want to figure out what percentage of the items that we sell, what percentage of the 29 items that we sell account for what percentage of usage. Now if you look at the homework assignment, the Word document, it says that basically there is some point where the percent of usage and percent of items should add up to about 100, approximately 100%. At that point, that would be your last A items. Those would be your most important items that you sell. Everything below that would be B and C items. So the easiest way to check that is just in a new column here, and this you wouldn't include in your Word document. So just for figuring out where to divide the two, you can say equals this plus this. So here's 50. At some point, this should equal 100, and then it would start increasing. Right at the very bottom, equal 200. We can just drag that all the way down. We can start looking through this and say, right about here, for these numbers. Right? So either, I would say, either these are your A items, 20% of the items account for 84% of your sales, or you could say these are A items, where 17% of the items account for 80% of sales. Either very close to the 80-20 rule, what the rule is named. Now with different numbers, you could have 30-70, you could have 60-40, you could have 90-10. The point is that at some point, your most important items, their usage plus the cumulative percent of items should add to approximately 100. So now if you try to figure out, should I make these A items or these A items? Should I make those A items or all of these the A items? There's really not one correct answer. If you didn't know anything about the items, like how we buy them, where we buy them from, what price we pay, what the freight looks like, are these from the same supplier, we would look at this and probably what I would do is say from 29 to 27, those are fairly close numbers. From 27 to 21, that's kind of a big drop. So I'd go ahead and say these are A items in this situation. Would not be an incorrect answer to say something else. You might also want to say, well, these two are really important, even though it's not quite to up to 100. We've got 7% of our items account for 62% of sales. Maybe we want those to be the most important. Right? So there are other options here, but this is just a starting point. And the next step would be, what are our B items? B items are somewhat important. So maybe, so from 17 to 37, let's say this is about 20% of the items we sell. They're accounting for about 13% of our our revenue, that might make sense to make those your B items. Right, fairly important. Look at these numbers. You might also say these 3 are B items, and then it drops down. These are less important. You might say B items are more of these. And that would be fine too. This might be your B items. You got C items are, look at this, 100 minus 37. It's about 62% of the items you sell are only going to account for about 7% of your revenue. So those are your C items in this case that are least important. Okay. So you could have something like this, or you don't have to color code them. You could do something like this and say, center that and say these are A items. You don't really need this column anymore. Right? You say these are B items. Something like that to make this look a little bit more neat, more professional. And so these are C items. So you could do something like that, and maybe even label that. Something like this. We now have a table that we could export to Microsoft Word. If you open a Microsoft Word document, kind of see how you could put that in. Things have changed a little bit with the newest version of Microsoft Office, but the basics are still the same. So you could copy this whole table into Microsoft Word, and you could go about trying to adjust the columns so that it makes a little more sense. Right, and then figure out, do we want to select the whole table, go to table properties, and go to borders and shading, and probably want to box around the entire thing for sure. And then maybe we'd put let's undo that. Go to borders and shading, apply to table, which I forgot to do, put a box around it. There's that. You might select these items and say underline that. Select all the A items. So you can add some borders and things. Now I have my Microsoft Word adjusted to show text boundaries. Those would not print. These dotted lines would not print. You can turn that off by going to Options, Advanced. Etc. Okay. Anyway, so you can copy that in Microsoft Word. You can right-click on this, and well, that doesn't work actually. If you have your cursor within this table, you go to References, and you could insert a caption above the selected item, Table 1, okay, and then you can go ahead and format that, maybe center your caption, and you can type some more things and give it some kind of a label that makes sense. And probably want to have that in all caps, etc. Include that in your document. Okay, one last thing, if you wanted to add a chart here, a figure, which I want you to do, cumulative usage, cumulative percent of items, go to Insert, use a scatter diagram with lines connecting, and this didn't work right. What I would like this to have is percent of items on the bottom, percent of sales on this column. So if you right click in here, hit select data, select the data set, edit that, X values, I would actually like to be G, here the cumulative items, so you can just edit these. Y values, I want to be percent of sales. Okay, now I have a chart that looks like this. I probably want to delete that because I only have one value in here. I could go in here, right click on the axis and format axis. This has changed slightly in 2013, but change it so that it only goes up to 100%. That's as far as 100% of the items. Format this axis, maximum of 1. Alright, I think it looks more neat if you take away these lines. If you're going to insert a caption above this in Word, you could take away this label. And you see this line doesn't go to 0, so one thing you could do is just add a column here. Doesn't need a number. Just say cumulative usage is 0, items are 0. Go ahead and click back on your graph here and say let's go ahead and include all of this information in our graph. So this is a picture, a figure, and if you insert a caption, you put figure 1 that shows us the different rankings. And you could try to edit this and add some lines between the A, B, and C items or something to make it look a little better. You can adjust how these numbers show up. You can go to Chart Tools, go to Format. Or you can't do that here. You could add things like axis titles if you wanted to. And then you can go in here and edit these and say this is percent of items, percent of sales. All right. And then once you have a chart formatted how you like, you can copy that, go back to Microsoft Word document, and let's just Control Enter to get a new sheet. Paste that in, right, and you can click on this chart. Again, it's changed slightly, but there's chart tools with design, layout, format, and you could change things if you wanted to. Now I'd probably go here and center the chart for sure. If you right click on a chart like this, insert caption, you'd want it to say figure because it's a picture. If you want to be consistent above or below the item like with a table, say OK. Something like this, some kind of a appropriate label that describes what the chart is. And this is going to, I would say this is the most professional way to include a table in a document or a memo of any sort. Right, you can double click on this title and label that also. Right, but cumulative percent of items, cumulative percent of sales, etc. But basically that's how you would do this homework. So probably about 25% of your grade is going to be from the report. Make sure it's professionally formatted and make sure it describes what you did, why you decided A items were A items, B items were B items, C items were C items, and a little bit about how you might manage those items differently. And that's all.